Hey guys, and welcome back to my channel for another midweek mystery video. Now, if you lived in the UK in the 90s, Melanie Hall is definitely a name that you would know. Her disappearance is one of the most talked about cases of the UK of the past 3 decades, up there with Claudia Lawrence and Susie Lamplugh. But as hard as investigators have tried, Melanie's case is proving very hard to solve, although with advances in technology, baby steps are being taken. Melanie was born on the 20th of August 1970, making her just 25 years old when she disappeared on the 9th of June 1996. She worked in the NHS as a hospital clerical officer at the Bath Royal United Hospital after graduating from the University of Bath with a degree in psychology just a year earlier in 1995. At the time of her disappearance, she was living with her parents in Bradford-on-Avon, and she'd been dating her boyfriend, Dr. Philip Carlbaum, for about 3 weeks after they'd met at the orthopaedic ward of the hospital where they both worked. Melanie's parents, Patricia and Stephen Hall, described her as a lovely, kind girl who gave a lot of pleasure to everyone that she met. She was 25, having recently achieved her dream of graduating with a psychology degree. She had her whole life ahead of her, just beginning her career and beginning to date, and then it was all taken away. On June 8th, Melanie had plans to stay at Philip's house, so her mum Patricia drops her at his house with an overnight bag, and that would be the last time that she ever saw her daughter. That evening, June 8th, the couple go out to a barbecue with around 60 other people. Witnesses said they seemed to be relatively happy, and they decided to head to the Cadillac's nightclub in Walcott Street, Bath, with another couple they knew from the barbecue. That day had been the opening game of the '96 Euro Football Championships, which were held in England, so people were in the mood to celebrate. England had drawn 1-1 with Switzerland that day. That night, Melanie was wearing a pale blue silk dress with a round neck, black suede mule shoes, a cream single-breasted jacket, a next watch, silver drop earrings and her grandmother's gold wedding ring. She also had a black satchel handbag in which she would have kept her makeup, checkbook and bank cards, possibly some cash as well. Now, it was later reported that at the club, Philip flew into a jealous rage and the two argued when he saw Melanie dancing with another man. He leaves the club upset, alone. At about 1:10 AM, their friends say goodbye to Melanie, believing that Philip was still there, and so she's left in the club alone. She's last seen around this time sitting on a stool by the dance floor. No one saw her leave the club, so it's not known if she was alone or not when she left. And this was 1996, before the time of massive TV and mobile phones. And I just want to say that whenever I talk about the mid-90s and mention the fact that mobile phones weren't commonplace, I get a load of people commenting saying like, mobile phones did exist in the 90s. I know they did, I grew up in the 90s, but not every single person had them. In 1996, it would have been a rarity for somebody to have a mobile phone, and Melanie didn't have one, so she couldn't be tracked via that method. Melanie was never seen again after leaving the club that night. She was reported as missing by her parents on the 11th of June after she failed to turn up to work at the hospital, and they realised that her car hadn't been touched in days. Her black Mini was still in the same place in the hospital car park that it had been when she'd left work days earlier. After her last shift on the Friday, her and Philip had headed straight to a party at a colleague's house, and so Melanie had left her car at the hospital. And then the next day, on the Saturday obviously, her mum dropped her at Philip's house to stay, so Melanie had no need for her car. But it was assumed that she would have picked it up at some point that weekend, and she hadn't. The Avon and Somerset police immediately jump into action to locate her. Her parents knew that Melanie was unlikely to harm herself or disappear of her own accord, so early on in the investigation it was believed that foul play was involved in her disappearance. Friends and family launched a campaign, and it wasn't long before an appeal was made on Crime Watch, a BBC programme that reconstructs major unsolved crimes to gain public interest. Crime Watch has led to leads, sometimes even solves in multiple cases, but not in Melanie's. Despite the fact the entire police force was on the case, there was little progress made. Melanie had simply vanished. Now, you're probably thinking the obvious. The boyfriend, the jealous boyfriend who stormed out of the club in a rage, is the one responsible. And he was obviously questioned at length after her disappearance, but he was eventually eliminated as a possible suspect. In all honesty, I wasn't able to find all that information about Philip and his movements after he left the club that night. All I know is that he was eliminated from the inquiry, and I'm sure the police had plenty of reason to do so. So the boyfriend, not a suspect. All in all, the police have interviewed 3,800 people in connection with Melanie's disappearance, focusing on clubbers and taxi drivers in the area. A team of 60 officers were assigned to the case, and they repeatedly searched River Avon and made multiple appeals on television, with her parents making heartfelt speeches, appealing for the public to come forward with any information they might have as to the whereabouts of their daughter. A $10,000 reward was offered for any information that led to the arrest and conviction of the person responsible for Melanie's disappearance, but to no avail. If anybody knew anything, they were staying silent. Eventually, Melanie's family began to accept the fact that she was never going to return, despite the fact that Patricia actually kept her bedroom as Melanie left it for years, just in case. She wanted to ensure that Melanie was never forgotten. In 2004, 8 years after the disappearance, Patricia and Stephen requested an inquest in order to obtain a formal decision on Melanie's status, whether she was dead or alive, legally. In England and Wales, you can make a claim for a declaration of presumed death if somebody has been missing for more than 7 years, or less than 7 years if you think they've died, for example, if they went missing during a natural disaster or similar. In Melanie's case, the coroner said that there was no indication that Melanie was still alive, and circumstances suggested that she had been unlawfully killed, but a lack of evidence meant an open verdict had to be recorded. However, she was declared as legally dead. At this point, the case was still open and active, with Detective Sergeant Mike Britton saying, "The case is open and will remain open until we find out what happened to Melanie." And true to his word, this case is still open today. Over the next 5 years, there was little progress in this case, until the 5th of October 2009. 13 years after Melanie's disappearance, workmen were clearing undergrowth next to a slip road at junction 14 of the M5 in South Gloucestershire, about 30 miles from where Melanie was last seen. They discover what's been described as plastic bin bags full of human bones, including a skull, pelvis and thigh bone. Other remains were found partially buried nearby, although no clothing was ever found. The body had been dumped, wrapped in multiple black bin bags which were tied together with a blue polypropylene rope, 13 metres in length, made up from 4 separate lengths tied together. In with the remains was a single gold ring. When told of the ring, Detective Sergeant Mike Britton recalled how Melanie had been wearing her grandmother's wedding ring on the night she disappeared. He shows a photo of this ring to Patricia and Stephen, who confirmed that it was definitely the same ring. Soon after, dental records confirmed that these were definitely the remains of Melanie Hall, just discarded on the side of the motorway. A later post-mortem revealed that she had likely died from severe head injuries. According to police, the area Melanie was left is key to their investigation. She would have been left there in haste, likely on the morning of or within a few days of June 9th. Officers then think that the person that dumped her body would have then driven onto the M5 northbound and turned round at the next junction to head back. It's highly likely that this person who killed Melanie was very familiar with this area. A set of Ford car keys were found just metres away from her remains, although it wasn't known if these were significant to Melanie's death or not. It seems like eventually they decided that these keys weren't relevant, because in October 2013, 4 years after the discovery of Melanie's remains, detectives appealed for any information about a white Volkswagen Golf GTI that they had recovered. They wanted to talk to anyone who had owned this particular Golf, number plate C752CYE, between the beginning of April 1996 to August 7th, 1996, when it was last known to be registered. It's believed this car may have had connections to Wales at the time, Cardiff and the Pentwyn area. Around this time, a 44-year-old man from Bath was arrested on suspicion of murder and was bailed pending further inquiries whilst the property was searched. However, in November 2014, it was announced there was insufficient evidence to charge this suspect. But this wasn't the first arrest police had made in this case, nor would it be the last. 2 men were arrested in 2003 but were released without charge after police searched multiple buildings and a field near Bath. In 2009, a 37-year-old man actually confessed to murdering Melanie but was eliminated after undergoing psychiatric tests. I assume he was found to have mental health issues and the police could prove that he didn't do it. In 2010, 2 more men were arrested, one of which actually handed himself into the police, but both were released without charge. In 2016, there was a huge leap forward in this case when police announced they had discovered traces of DNA on the blue rope that held the bin bags together. It was possible that this DNA belonged to the killer. It was said that this DNA was still in embryonic stage, but with constant advances in technology, this could be vital to the investigation. And this led to a focus in on this rope. Detective Chief Inspector James Riccio of the Major Crime Investigation Team said, "We recovered a 13-metre length of 4mm rope from the scene, made up from 4 separate lengths knotted together. In addition to the 3 knots joining the rope, there were 4 other knots on the rope, a total of 7 knots. It's commercially manufactured rope and commonly used on building sites and for drawing electrical cable through trunking." The police appealed for anyone who knew people who used this kind of rope in the mid-90s to let the police know. Maybe this person's demeanour drastically changed after this summer, 1996. Or they appealed for anyone who knew of anyone who was in possession of this rope which went missing in the summer of 1996 to come forward. This seems like a reach, asking people to remember a piece of rope 20 years ago. But I suppose it shows how desperate the police are to get this solved. This seemingly insignificant piece of information really could be key to solving this case. Soon after, a 45-year-old man was arrested on suspicion of murder, but was released a few days later. As of today, 11 arrests have been made in connection with Melanie's murder in total, but no one has ever been charged due to a lack of evidence. The police have exhausted every possible lead with this case, and it's looking as if this case will only be solved by one of 2 things: the advancement of DNA technology or someone coming forward with a vital piece of information. Police haven't been able to rule out links with other cases, such as the 1986 murder of estate agent Susie Lamplugh. She went to meet a potential client, the name Mr. Kipper written in her diary, never to be seen again. I do have a full video on Susie's case if you'd like to learn more, but her case has yet to be solved, although it's thought that the person responsible is a man called John Cannon. Now, he was actually a murderer at the time of Melanie's disappearance, but some far-fetched theories talk about how he orchestrated Melanie's murder from prison, something we could probably all agree is very unlikely. So unless somebody else is responsible for Susie's murder, then it's unlikely that it's the same person responsible for both of them. And then there's also the Batman rapist, dubbed so because of a baseball cap featuring the Batman logo that was left at the scene of one attack. He is still unidentified and is the subject of Britain's longest running serial rape investigation called Operation Eagle. The Batman rapist is known to have committed at least 17 attacks on women in Bath, active since 1991. He's a white man, slim to medium build, between 30 and 50. He has a fetish for tights and he knew/knows the Bath area very well. But with a description so broad, it could be pretty much any white male in Bath. But he is thought to have attempted to carjack a woman at knife point in the same area of the city just hours before Melanie disappeared. Although as far as I'm aware, he was only known to rape, never murder. As always, people have attempted to link Melanie's case to many well-known serial killers. Levi Belfield and Christopher Halliwell are names that pop up often in relation to Melanie's case. Although as far as police have made the public aware, there's nothing substantial to link any of these names. To date, Avon and Somerset police have received 1,751 calls from the public about Melanie's case, and they've taken 1,668 statements. They've interviewed thousands. There's been no big leads in this case since 2016, and it seems like they're still waiting for technology to catch up with the DNA found on the rope. I think that's going to be the answer to this case. You've just got to hope that Melanie's killer has committed other crimes and is on the police database. It has been suggested that more than one person may have been involved in the disposal of the body, but not in the murder. And police have asked this other person to come forward with information. They're also still appealing for any witnesses who may have seen Melanie leave the Cadillac Club after 1:10 AM on Sunday the 9th of June 1996. None of Melanie's clothing or personal items have ever been recovered, apart from the gold rings. They're also still searching for that. It's clear that the police aren't going to give up with this case anytime soon though. 24 years on and they're still actively investigating leads that come in. If you live around the Bath area, pay particularly close attention to this case. I really hope that Melanie's case is solved one day because her parents deserve to see justice for their daughter. It's so rare for a case still to be open after 24 years, but to me it looks like the police aren't intending to give up on this one anytime soon. All this case needs is just one person with one piece of information to come forward, and that might be all they need to really figure out what happened to Melanie. Thank you so much for watching this video. Make sure you click the subscribe button down below and let me know any requests you have for videos in the comments, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye guys.